Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself into the comment box, and you'll see me shift my head from time to time to check and see on those inquiries. Today's guest is Baltimore chef Nancy Longo of Pierpoint Restaurant. Their doors opened in 1989 when Nancy introduced the world to modern Maryland cuisine. She is a James Beard humanitarian nominee, has a heart of gold, and a passion to feed people. Pierpoint's historic Fells Point locale is home to special event dinners. For example, the upcoming Mardi Gras dinner, and after that, she's going to celebrate National Crab Day. You get the sense that you are not in a restaurant, that this is more Nancy's home, and you are invited in for good food and great conversations with a friend. Let's bring Nancy in.
Good afternoon, Dara.
Good afternoon, Toots. How you doing?
I am
Uh,
good.
Nancy and I are friends, and we probably go back to 1989
We do.
when I arranged a cooking class in your restaurant. Other than doing the show today, what's on your plate to do?
Well, it's an interesting uh, time that we are in the restaurant business. A lot of restaurants are, kind of changing their concepts and doing their things differently because of the fact that we have issues with food and costs and things like that. But my change, and you made a comment about what it was that I was up to these days. Came about the fact that most of the restaurants around me in Fells Point are mainly either extremely fine dining, which we never were. We have high end food, but we don't have the facility looking like that. And then also there are either bars and a lot of beers. And I reached a point after the pandemic. Some of it was started prior to that, that I would change my business model to some dining and also to do a lot of these theme dining dinners. And part of it is because I've always been a frustrated theater person. When I was younger, I used to do set design in high school and for several different schools after high school. And so I like the atmosphere of doing these dinners. It is a tiny thing. And if you've been to a bunch of them, those who've been to them, there's a lot of very tiny, painstaking things that I make for them. There's a lot of crazy dishes that go on in containers and boxes. I laughed the last one we were at the Chinese New Year, and I said, "How many of you know anybody that owns 100 bento boxes so other guests can have some interesting things?" So I decided years ago when we did a few of them we did these old Baltimore dinners. We did them because some people wanted to have some fun to taste things. And also, some of them were fundraisers for a bunch of charities that I'm involved with. And they just exploded. Mainly the Asian ones are the most popular. It's kind of like a gig where you have to do it 2 days in a row because we can't fit everybody in. And because we're working on a lot of things to make them happen. But I feel like that this is a thing that is very much in tune with what's going on in the food world these days. I think people who are older like the connection, and so when they come to these dinners, and I have a giant community table. You're going to meet somebody new that you've never known before, or you're going to meet some neighbors, the people that live in the city. That they're not your next door neighbor, but they are your neighbors, and I've seen these wonderful friendships blossom from these things. But you're also going to get a meal that's thought provoking. I mean, for instance, the one we had last summer of the indoor picnic, where we literally covered the place in astroturf and
Right.
offered everyone little chairs to go home and cicada bugs. And but I like the theater of it all. So that's kind of where my fun with food lies. The other thing is for a chef, I think that it's a really, really good way to keep your skills up. And it's a great way for you to continue to create. I think that sometimes when you you've been in the restaurant business like I have for 35 years. That's a long time. And you think, well, I made this thing. Can I bring that back? We look at these menus, we look at these recipes, and it's just like, I have to keep myself engaged with things that I enjoy and people that I enjoy. So,
Well,
I
that
really
goes,
think that's fun.
yeah, well, that goes back to me saying that we're friends, but I know I'm not the only one that coming to your restaurant feels like I'm more coming to your home, that the
This,
restaurant is more your home. You spend 95% of your
I
life in that
do.
restaurant.
I laugh
And
because we were trying to get a parking sticker, and I said, well, but I'm here 16 hours a day, more than I am at home. But
right.
it's the
So,
thing.
right. Are you busy? Let's see, we're Thursday. Are you doing the boxes? Let's tell people about the boxes and how you transitioned into the boxes.
So during the pandemic, my friend Andrew Sachs, who owns Harbor Park Garage, asked me if I would be willing to partner with him for a project. And the project started out initially that we were making meals and boxes for COVID families and people that were out of work. And so we did 26,000 boxes in 3 months. Pretty crazy when you think about that. It was also kind of a fun way for the staff to work hard, but feel little stress. And so we continue to keep doing the boxes. The boxes that we now went to a once a month. We put up a menu. You can find that at Pierpoint Restaurant Facebook page. We do put some of these things on our uh,
Website, but it's
website,
mostly, but
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 they
it's
they're so
mostly
hard because they
face,
keep moving.
right?
We also do. We've kind of modified that meal, and that is years ago. I had a job working for a gentleman that was with the State Department, and he was very ill, and he had several months left to live. And
That's your nurture meals, wasn't
that is
it?
part of Nurture Meals, and so Nurture Meals is now combined with the other ones. So if you got a friend or a family member that's like their daughter just had a baby and you would like to send them a box, or someone just had surgery and they can't walk, so they need a box, or we have some customers who have a family member with dementia. They can't let them out of their sight. We have some people that are dealing with cancer treatments, and we're doing uh, bone broth or other things that keep them from being able to eat things, or modifying it from not having certain things in their diet. And that is a very long standing thing with me because my father had Crohn's and celiac, and so I was accustomed to modifying meals as a chef. And I think that um, a chef is a very interesting kind of a word that you use. It was meant chief, run the kitchen, but in this day and age, I think it means so many more things. You're just not just cooking food in a restaurant. And that, people make my joke. My joke is my epitaph will say it's my job to feed everybody. And I do. I look out, I try to find people, friends and family and other folks who from one week to the next may need something. We have a mutual friend, and a couple weeks ago we had some leftover brisket, and I wouldn't want to tell you how many text messages I got from someone from something so simple that they just can't eat a lot of stuff but wanted that badly, and it made their day. So as a chef, that's your thing. You cook things for people other than just a daily service, or a catering event for someone's wedding or a birthday party or something like that. You really try to inject yourself into the event where you can give them food that they're not only going to enjoy but make a memory from it. And so we continue the boxes. We continue these other meal boxes. Got someone with the flu and they need to just have some soup sent to them. We do that. We do now actually have a person to deliver it. We're still trying to chug along with the cooking classes. That's a little bit harder downtown. A lot of folks, they don't come downtown as much. Fells Point's still a fun place. It's a really, really, really cool place, and it's had its struggles lately. There's a bunch of
Yeah,
restaurants that have gone out of business, but we're gonna keep on. We're gonna keep on doing those things.
right.
So
Well, I think just to tell people to find out everything that Nancy is doing, where is the most up to date, is on Facebook, Pierpoint Restaurant and Catering on Facebook, and you can find out about Mardi Gras and the Mardi Gras dinner. There's going to be seafood, etouffee, gumbo, crabs, crayfish. Um,
That's another one of my loves. Dara knows this, that I was very good friends with Chef Paul. One of the guy that actually runs the company now was a student of mine. I used to teach at Bic, and he was a very homesick young man. And he said to me, "Well, my daddy went to school with Chef Paul," and my eyes got really big. Always
and
wanted to
that's
meet him.
Paul Perdome,
Yes.
everybody.
So he said to me, "We can go to New York and meet him." I said, "Okay." So I met him, and we became instant friends. And we always had these conversations, fascinated about the history of food and where things overlapped, and certain things that we moved from state to state that became part of some other state food. And I'm fascinated now with the culture of understanding how most of our food in America is really from the African American culture. Rest of it we borrowed from Europe or other countries that we came to America with. Which the beautiful thing is that that's all part of what we enjoy about American food. But so Paul and I became very good friends, and I used to go down there to teach these Cajun folks in the country, not in New Orleans, about Maryland food. And we would laugh because there were other chefs that would come, and we'd do this thing together, and they would say, "Oh, we sold out from your group." And I said, "Well, let's face it, Cajuns love crabs." And I knew that the history of a crab cake actually came from Louisiana. It was a slave breakfast thing where they used to make corn pancakes and they put crab meat in them. And as the folks would
Philly.
travel through the Chesapeake Bay and on their way back to Acadiana or to Canada, they would have the chance meeting with some of the watermen here in Maryland, and they explained this thing to them, and we just turned it on its head and convinced ourselves that if we put less breading in there, we could make this crab cake thing. So we have a direct line of that to Louisiana, and it's a fascinating thing to find out. A lot of things you don't know, but you learn as a chef, and it's a really good way to learn the history of our country and how people moved about and lived in state to state and things. So I'm always fascinated with learning. If you don't want to keep learning as a chef, then you're done.
Right. Right. And I think you and I put together a couple of dinners. It was really more around just about the end of the pandemic.
Hmm.
I think I'm trying to remember. We would do a Julia Child dinner. We had the Julia Child movie. We played it at the
Yes.
bar, and you created a menu from her recipes, a multi-course
Hmm.
menu. We did Anthony Bourdain. We did a dinner there. We didn't do anything with Charlie Trotter, but I did come down and watch
Oh,
the movie.
we did. Yeah, I had a small time. You actually came the second time. We did have the dinner with Charlie Trotter, and I was always a big fan of his because Charlie was a perfectionist, and I had my dear friends, Carrie Nabahedian and Debbie Gold, who were good friends, worked with him. And I always just sensed the softness about him. And then later, Carrie told me, he said every time he would travel, he'd send her a letter or card from wherever it was about the joy that he found in finding something else about food. So, but he was a very complex soul, as was Anthony Bourdain. Although you know this, and other people know this, but I worked for him for about 6 months, and that was the craziest kitchen experience I've ever had in my entire life.
Which brings
But
me to a subject of women in restaurant kitchens. We know what it's like today, but let's go back to 89, 87, 85 when you were starting out.
oh my God, well, so I was really young. My sister was a chef, and my sister was wild. She was actually cooking meals for Camp David. So she said she believed she fed Sadat his last meal before he left the United States. It's pretty wild. So I was really young at the time, 13 or 14 years old. I went to work for Sasha, and then I ended up going to Bic and then going to work for a chef by the name of Richard Burns. Richard was a chef from the Palace in New York, which is the most expensive restaurant that ever existed. And he came to work at Gianni's, the harbor, and we all decided, a bunch of us decided we would go work there. Well, there were three women in that kitchen. It was all men, and it was a very tough place to be. And we knew that Richard was a kind of chef that really believed in empowering women after some of the other women chefs that he had previously empowered. And so we wanted to go learn. And also, I thought it was interesting because I grew up in an Italian family where we only cooked Southern Italian food. So I was going to go learn something about Northern Italian food, which was a whole other world. And it was a good experience, but it was kind of crazy. There was a lot of very, very hard things to maneuver in those kitchens because we were three women. One of them was making pastries. The other two of us were working that line. There's 10 other guys. They're not liking this too much. But my line was always, well, who cooked your meal when you were a kid? And I think that
Right.
I had those quipped lines because I had a father that was a boxer. And he used to say to me, go out there and tell them not to make fun of you for being a redhead. So you had to have a toughness to be able to work in those kitchens in those days. Eventually, when things came around where they realized that some of this was harassment or sexual harassment or craziness, that these women that were working in these kitchens were working just as hard, if not harder, than some of the guys there, that we then became, you know, um, a person to work with or to give your kitchen to. And so
Mm.
that was a really great thing. I went then to work for something fishy, which was kind of fun. I'm sorry that it's a closed restaurant now, but back in the time when Steve and Billy opened that place, it was a magnificent place. There were 50 different kinds of fish in that restaurant every day. It was nuts. So we would make you whatever we were going to do with that. During that time, I ate 175 different kinds of fish from all over the world. I I recently have done a couple of dinners with Dan Roderick. We did these things about fish tales and the Feast of the Seven Fishes, which were
Right.
totally different than what you would consider the traditional one to be. But
Right.
my large love is fish, so I've always enjoyed that. But anyway, so that kitchen situation was kind of crazy. But you as a woman, you worked hard, and we continue to work hard. As far as the
That's
physical thing,
right.
wow.
The working at something fishy. It's had it was very unique to the area, and it was obviously fish oriented. And you got to know quite a bit about many fish, and you also knew about what was happening with fish. Your James Beard humanitarian nominee was for your efforts to save the bay and doing those dinners. But did you do undercover work at, was it
Y-
Fulton
yes.
Fish Market?
So after we did that dinner, um, it came to be that they were having a hearing in DC. And so this is one of the proudest moments I've ever had. I suffered a very serious lymphatic uh, issue, and to this day I still have this issue. I got sick from some polluted fish, and it got into my lymph nodes. And so subsequently, they don't work anymore. And I'm very crazy about worrying about fish. Alice Waters and I think or Mark Miller, one of them, were asked to do this hearing in front of Congress about safer fish. And so I went and testified in front of Congress about why we need to keep fish clean. And this is something that I think we're going to really need to think about right now, again, in the current situation that we're living in. That being said, John Kionis contacted me and asked me if I would go do a 2020 ABC Live, um, buying fish all over the country and finding out what the state is with the water and the fish. And it was eye opening. We went to the markets in Chicago where they were literally taking lobsters that were dead, freezing them, selling to people. You're a lobster lover. I don't know anybody that loves lobster more than you, Dara, but the interesting thing is the average person doesn't realize the grocery store does the same thing. And here's the weirdest thing about lobsters: you can get a lobster, you can freeze it, and it looks like it's totally fine. But if you cook it and it was dead before that, it literally will turn into liquid. Whereas a crab, we know about crabs. Crabs just get a little mushy, and you know that that thing was dead when they sold it to you because you're not going to eat it because you can tell. But that lobster will literally turn into liquid. So there was a lot of that going on. There was a whole bunch of other seafood that clearly was bad, dead mussels, clam. And the problem is that when we leave coastal states or states where our mainstay is fish or seafood, it's a big, 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 big problem. Now we have a totally different problem going on, and that is the proliferation of farm raised everything fish. So, one of the things that was part of this hearing we're talking about farm raised salmon. So, at the time, they were projecting to take these salmon, let them live in these tanks, and then put them back out in the wild. And what happened was they found out that these salmon literally became like piranha fish. So they would go back out in the wild and they were eating up whole schools of baby fish, which made it completely unsustainable. And and so now a fair amount of this fish that we are buying in these grocery stores is all farm raised. And so for someone like me who has a compromised immune system or is concerned about those things, I did end up about a year or two later with cancer, which I'm a 30-year survivor of. But these things are so crazy and dangerous. And fish is the most healthy thing for a human being to eat. It's great for your brain. It doesn't have a lot of cholesterol, but it has a lot of very great nutrients for a human being. And so it is an important thing, and it is important. So I did go do that hearing, and I did do the thing with John Kionis. It was pretty wild, and so subsequently, a bunch of the chefs said we would like to nominate you for a humanitarian award. I lost, but I lost big. If you're going to lose, lose big. I lost to Paul Newman, and if Paul Newman was going to give $1 million a year to children's charities through his food, God bless him. It was a great loss. But you know what? It's nice to know that my peers thought well enough to me to nominate me for humanitarian award, and it was a big honor. So but I'm still fighting over the fish, and I'm always going to fight over that. So, it is a scary proposition that we have if we are going to, change. I'm trying not to get too political, but we're going to change gears and people running these things, and with USDA and FDA, we could find ourselves in a scary situation. My next joke was I told some customers that I was going to turn this into a private club so that I could make sure that I could get them all of the quite nice fish that they were feeling healthy about, as well as some meat from some small private farms. But it is something to definitely think about in this day and age with food. We like to think about cool and wonderful things that we can do with food, but at the same time, we really do have to be good stewards of food and how it's served to people these days, from a standpoint of, is this safe and is this healthy and is this sustainable? The sustainable thing with fish has been a problem for a very, very long time. um, and I am concerned about fish that's now reached the point where it is just unattainable to eat. When you go, for those of you that go to the grocery store, I want to buy some Chilean sea bass. It's $40 a pound. I have a news flash for you folks. I buy it wholesale. It's only $35 a pound for me. So we're going with things that people will really be able to enjoy. And so it is definitely a thing to think about going forward. And what will happen if we buy fish from other countries with tariffs, or were we not going to allow it to come into this country? And it's gonna this we're in a crazy crossroads with some food right now. Really crazy crossroads. But
Well,
I yeah,
right.
go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
I agree with you on many levels. And if we thought dining out was a challenge before, it's only going to be harder. Um, Look, we can talk about eggs. All
Eggs.
the eggs,
Yeah.
eggs. The jokes on Instagram, whatever. Instead of any having caviar, which is another type of egg, the cost of an egg is 80 cents, a dollar a piece almost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're facing a lot of crises. So, what I like to tell people about Pierpoint is if you're coming to Baltimore, if you're in Baltimore, Pierpoint Restaurant and Catering on Facebook, you can see these special events. Are you still doing specials during the week at the bar?
Yes, yeah, we saw that. I mean, um I found a way to come up with some items that I think are exciting and fun, and also kind of down home too for folks that want to be able to go out during the week without spending a lot of money. I think that's another thing. I think that people really need connection, and they can have some connection through food. But if things are at a point where people feel like, well, it's so expensive, I can't go out even during the week just to go get something to eat, then we're losing our connection with other people. And so we started doing them. We also will be doing some more series of that during the week with some folks with some more movies during the week. I think that people need to get out of the house. They need to not watch the news, the TV, the whatever. And some of them are going to be some some documentaries with some customers of ours who have worked doing some documentaries with the CIA and other interesting things. I try to create an environment of a person being able to come and learn some things. But we still do all the other wonderful things. I mean, I think that it's a nice place to find a small restaurant where you can feel at home. And I think that a lot of people in this day and age, we have a lot of people in my neighborhood here who are single men or women who are older and really want to go find a place where they can actually feel like they're in their living room, or they can feel like they are going to come
Right.
and see something interesting or learn something new. So
Your
I'm
bar
I'm
is a
really happy
very,
that that happened after the pandemic, because
right,
we've never been a bar place. We have a
right.
bar. We redid the bar during the pandemic, mainly for dining because it was old and it needed to be updated. But also, it just now became a place to invite folks to come by themselves. And
It's a
I've
very
have
convivial.
Oh, it is, and I will tell you something that is the most fascinating thing about being here and having this bar and being able that I have met more interesting human beings who've walked through this front door from, I'm going to say, close to 15 different countries. And the only reason I say that is because I've given them, this is just an offshoot thing. My husband passed away a few years ago. So I give these folks ashes to take to these different countries. So my husband loved to travel. And so now he's been to 15 different countries. But what I'm fascinated is that these people that I've met, and they're all mostly younger, who have worked for things that I hope for going forward will survive at NIH or at Hopkins or other different research projects. It's just I've learned something, and I ask them things about their culture, but they found us, and we've found them, and found some really, really interesting things. So restaurants aren't just, oh, let's just cook some food and take it out to table five, and we're gonna have a funky drink thing or whatever. It really is, in a small place, a wonderful place to meet people from all over. I laugh because we think about the fact that we've been here for 35 years, and I've seen all kinds of crazy things in and out of here in this neighborhood. I'm proud that I live. I say live. I cook across the street from Frederick Douglass's schoolhouse, and I laugh. My other chef friend said, well, over the years, have you had a lot of interesting people in it? Well, yeah, I have. Um, it- some people know that at some point in time, for health reasons, I was cooking for Barry Levinson, and came in there. His aunt looked at a picture of my father at the bar, found out my father dated him. That was a funny, interesting thing. People ask about the pieces over the bar. If you're over top of the bar, you were a customer or friend, and you're no longer with us. But on the end of the bar is probably the most interesting human being I've ever fed. There is a doll, and that doll is a Rosa Parks doll. So at some point in time, Levi Watkins, who designed a piece for a pacemaker, brought her in to meet me. He said, I think she just needs to meet you. And so I laugh. I said, well, Rosa, where would you like to sit? She said, I'd like to sit in the back. I said, fine with me. And we proceeded to talk about things and culture and understanding, the Black community in America. And so I say that a restaurant is a place to share a meal with someone over a lot of interesting aspects of your life, and learning things about other people, and sometimes you learn something about their culture. I've actually had folks in here from, like, so far away, uh, Asian nations, and they said to me, these people came, and the kids speak English, and I sent them out some homemade dumplings, and they said, well, my father only speaks Chinese, but he wants you to know that you got that down right. So, I feel like I learned something really cool from them. Or I've had some other folks that were Ethiopian and taught me things about those how to cook that kind of food. So,
Right.
it's a great cultural thing, and I think that restaurants, like I said, we're in a tight place right now with food costs and margins, and we're all trying to do what we can
Survive.
to be able to give people an experience and allow them to come out of their house, and not just feel like that this is life, and this is how life is going to be, because we don't know. And but the bottom line is that, we got to keep eating. And I think that was mainly because my father and my Italian family brought me up to be that way, because
What
we,
was your family table like?
well, it's interesting because my mother, as you see that I'm the redhead, well, my mother was Scottish, and she grew up in a family that they were pretty wealthy, and they lived their life to party. Used to tell me stories about buying things instead of getting rid of them during the Depression. And so I saw that side of the family, but yet they were the most open-minded, interesting human beings. And then there was my dad's side of the family, who actually had a lot of money in Italy. They just gave up all the property, moved here because my grandfather wanted to have a better life. Now, oddly, they never learned to speak English. So I would watch them. Everything was my eyesight. And my grandmother would come on Sunday, and then there would be 50 people come. But it was fascinating because they all spoke to her in Italian. We didn't understand what she was saying. She made things, and to this day, we had a family with 4 kids and three out of four of us were chefs. So it's an interesting thing. But during the week, God help me, my mother was not a great cook, but I felt sorry for her because she was running a cafeteria. She's got my father with Crohn's and celiac, and he also was a gym rat. Lived way before his time because he was a boxer. So he ate pretty healthy. My sister was a chef and went to Cordon Bleu, was had some words about the kind of things we should be eating. My other sister was a hippie and she was like, macrobiotic. My brother became a full-fledged vegetarian at age 10, which would have been like 1971. My mother was running a cafeteria at my house. But I think that that's the most wonderful thing that I learned from that was that I, as a chef, need to be very cognizant, understanding, and kind to other people when they need their needs met with food. So it's okay because I grew up with that. I think that we think about those things in this day and age about all the different needs that people have with food, and it becomes an interesting thing. And I know that there are a lot of chefs who will say it's my way or the highway and this is what I'm making or else don't eat here. But the trick to it and the knowledge of a chef is to know and to understand what is it that I can do for this person that needs something modified while remaining the chef that I am and the integrity of the food and allowing someone to stop an experience. And I think that what happens is that we have learned to adjust, and I think that a lot of chefs have become better at it than they were years ago. I think that years ago
Right.
when someone walked in and said, "Oh, I need gluten," princess just doesn't want to eat anything because she's afraid of gaining weight. Well, no, it's real. It's absolutely real. And I think about my father having had those issues and not knowing that. So we're talking about the 50s and 60s. I mean, the man grew up in the Italian world. I mean, everything had gluten in it. Gluten in the pasta,
Right.
gluten in the focaccia, gluten.
Right.
So, like,
Gluten with everything. Right. Right.
absolutely. But we also have learned now because of outside sources about certain things that we can add to food to make things even more healthy and still enjoy and have fun at the same time. So
Right.
I'm optimistic about dining in the future and being creative as well as being nutritional and
Right.
food with a
And I want to
purpose.
point out to people that if you have anybody special who has special dietary needs, Nancy is doing special boxes. It's called Nurture Meals.
That
And
is that is a thing that I have just absolutely loved. If I told you the four people that I'm cooking for right now that have those issues, man, it's like amazing because they will just be so excited because they just don't think they could have anything to eat. And when I was working for the man from the State Department, who had several months to live, he was definitely eating things he shouldn't have. But when a person's only joy is food, and with some people that I know right now who are
right,
ill, that is their joy. That is their thing. If they are not, so ill that they can't eat, that brings them some sense of joy because maybe they can't go out or they can't do other things or they got to be careful about where they're going.
right,
I'm amazed at some of the text messages and the emails that I get from these folks. So it's a joyful thing. It's a whole nother side of being a chef that is really really just important. And when you're a chef and you've been cooking for a really long time, you think most of it is like, yeah, I want to keep learning and I'm really enjoying these things, that new things that I'm cooking and stuff. But man, if I can bring some joy to someone else as part of my position as chef, it's really a great feeling.
Well, I want to remind people it's Pierpoint Restaurant in Baltimore in historic Fells Point. The website is pierpointrestaurant.com. The Facebook page, Pierpoint Restaurant and Catering, and you'll see all these special events. And if you follow the page, then you'll get notifications of the events that are coming up. I mean, we've done Chinese New Year's, the picnic, tequila night, Spanish cheese night, champagne night, Robert Burns nights, National Spaghetti Day, dumpling day, pie day. There's always something going on. And some people are hesitant. Nancy has 4 parking spots in the evening. So if you're coming down from the county, just call up. She will direct you where those 4 spots are that you can park your car. That shouldn't tie you up. And then I had friends who came down and they Ubered down because they went, we want to drink.
Right.
They drank, they had a good time. And I've met many, many people at these dinners. We're
Oh, I
time
laugh.
for
Now we have some friends that will say, "Is Dara coming? I would like to be at the seat next to her," because they
yeah,
enjoy the conversations that they've had with you. And you know that we've had other chefs that have come to these things. We've had other restaurant owners. We did the old Baltimore dinners. We were laughing. One of them, we did one for the entire Marconi family, which was a fabulous
right.
one. A few people snuck in on that one, and they were like, this is amazing. Like, but we still do those. And you know, the other thing is that we we allow people to call us and say, I have my group. We got 15 or 20 of us, and we want to do this dinner. Will you put it on for us? I've done it during the week for somebody that said to me, oh, come on, you can't really be Italian. And we said, okay, well, you're gonna come and I'm gonna show you.
Right, right.
It is a funny thing. My DNA test came back, said I was more Italian than anything, which is very funny. You know, it's like a litter of kittens. All the kids look different. My siblings are all have black hair and dark skin, but yeah.
But your
So they're yeah. But my mother would,
mother
you
was
know, they they just it's weird because they love food. So my mom's family were heir to American tobaccos. They had money and they traveled. And the interesting thing was, while I learned all of this other stuff about food from the Italian side of the family, when I would go to my grandmother's house in Montgomery County, there was always something that somebody there was cooking from one of these trips that they went on. So even though I say that they were party animals and sat around and drank like fish, typical Irish, Scottish, English type of behavior, they really did love food. And I think that that's a really cool thing that I learned from them about their trips to Europe or their trips to Mexico or whatever. I don't know who was learning about Mexican food in 1968 when you're 6 years
right.
old. I was. And so I think it's kind of cool and fun in that respect. But I think that it should never stop. You know, my
The education should continue. The
it
curiosity
does.
should
and
continue.
and and you know, like I see other chefs who tell me, you know, every once in a while they're, even though they're not in the business anymore, they have dinner parties and they bring other chefs together that cook things. I think we need more of that in this day and age. I think we need more so we can have conversation and dialogue with people about cultures in America and other places that, you know, we all love food and we all want to be healthy and we all want to have enjoyment and learn something new about something and someone else. So I just think that
Well, your
it
dinners are great about that because you'll pick a theme and you'll go with that.
I
And
do.
somebody who might not have tried something, at least you're a gateway to that cuisine.
Well, I laughed. Okay, so we had that year the snake dinner 2 weeks ago, and one of the young men that works for me was pretty young, and his family came to the dinner. They bought tickets to come, and we got to that course with the eel, and they were like, "Eel." I said, "Well, you know, we have to have at least one snake on the
Right.
menu." And they were all, their eyes got really big, and the young man, I gave him his little eel. It was, on a little tempura squash, and he was like, that's really good. And I said, oh, good. I have one new person I turned on to something
Uh,
good today. And he said, well, my parents loved it too. And I said, well, that's good. So when you go out, that the EO thing came from me because after that lymphatic issue, I can no longer have any kind of raw seafood at all.
yeah.
It's
Let me get to
anyway,
my final questions. You and I can talk forever.
absolutely.
And this is show 3 with me, and
Hmm.
you jumped in, um, and you're always engaging, saying something important, and we are very good friends. So I thank you for popping
You're
in
welcome.
and on this. I've maybe asked you some of these. I'm trying to come up with new ones. If you go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, Probably, to be honest, to travel more before I decided to be in this business. It's not that I didn't. It's just that people in this business, if you are an owner, don't realize that it's a labor of love. So this thing becomes your child, your family, and you don't have that much time to do that traveling. And so that's what I would have told myself
Okay.
to do more of.
What 2 things must be in your fridge?
Well, I laugh because I have a fridge downstairs and a fridge in my bedroom. I have a mini bar. I always need to have some kind of water, and I always need to have some kind of salad dressing. I am a salad queen. I got that from that Italian side of the family. We laugh because there is a menu item called "Let Nancy make you a salad." People come here all all week long looking for that salad, and I like to have some
Right.
fun. So those two things.
Well, I've been there when somebody came in, you said, and you did the Baltimore thing. Okay, hun, what do you feel like eating? I'll make it for you.
Well, there is that.
It
Yeah,
wasn't it wasn't the menu. You said, what do you want? What do you want? I'll make it for
exactly.
you.
Well, I think that that comes from all of us spending every day writing menus for specials. And so if you decide that the special is going to be written right now out of my head, then why not? Why not?
Right. Right.
I love no
Uh,
menu days.
right. If you could give a piece of advice to women within the culinary industry, what would that piece of advice be?
I would um, tell women, younger women than me, to really try to spend as much time as you can balancing your life and your health and happiness. I think that a lot of women and young women when I was coming up were hell bent on working all the time so that they could succeed. And they felt like that in order for them to compete with men that were considered to be the ones who were running the kitchens, that you had to work all the time or that you had to really just be hardened at it. But I feel like now it's really important that women realize that we're accepted, we're doing well, we make great things. And a lot of the guy chefs are all our friends, and that we really need to take some time for ourselves to do things that I think that women really need to do to keep themselves healthy and happy.
Good, good. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
I don't know. I don't
I did
know.
a good job.
You did a good job. I think that the one question you didn't ask was, how long do you think you can continue to keep cooking? I think that if your body doesn't give out and you love that cooking thing, but let's do it like Julia Child. Keep it up until you're
It
just done.
done. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So my cooking is not as vigorous as yours, but what was it, like last week, I made a mushroom barley soup and I play cards with women of my age or a bit older. And I said, I'm looking forward to going home for that bowl of mushroom barley soup. And she looked at me, she says, Where'd you buy it? And she looked at me, she says, Stupid me, you made it, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah, I cook. I enjoy food. I enjoy people who make food. Um, I still have things. I was just reaching out to get some contact information on Randy Stahl. I really want to do something with like Randy and you and Harvey Sugarman, maybe Michael Rourke, Michael Gettier, Ricardo Basio, everybody who was in the area back in the early 90s, uh, or in the 90s here in Baltimore. But that's a whole other
No, and it was
thing.
some fun times then. Great, great friendships. Really,
Mm,
really. I mean, Michael Gettier and I did years of our
The
daily
Catholic,
bread, and that's a thing that's kind of fun. And Gino Troya too, how you work with another chef, and there was absolutely no rumbling. You worked with each other, and you figured out you do this, and you helped each other, and it's just enjoyable. And I think that we've lost a lot of those friendships. I think that chefs are so tuned into I gotta do, and they don't go out and they don't have as many friendships. And I think that that's a bummer. But in
yeah,
those days, it was always something really cool with each other, and we did somehow manage to have that time to be with your chef friends. And I still talk to some of them on the internet. I miss those days. I think the
right,
'90s were pretty cool in Baltimore.
right. It was. Nancy, thank you so much for
You're
jumping in.
welcome. You are
And
welcome.
you are always a pleasure. Everybody, pierpointrestaurant.com, on Facebook, Pierpoint Restaurant and Catering, to follow that page, and then you'll get notifications on all these events. Nancy, I will say good afternoon. And I just have a couple of things to say at the end of the show. Thank you.
You're
Mwah.
welcome. Thank you. Be well.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me via my email, food@jmoreliving, or my Instagram is at Dara Cooks. And you can also find my Facebook page, which is the Food Enthusiast. So you can follow me there. You can sign up jmoreliving.com for the free This Week in Baltimore Eating newsletter. Go to their webpage, jmoreliving.com, and the menu will say connect. Just click on connect and you'll see where you can sign up. And that newsletter comes out, I think, almost every week. And it has menus, the show, recipes, what I said, menus, well, food stories, what's going on in Baltimore, any type of food story, recipes that you can find that are going up. So check it out. It's free. And that's jmoreliving.com. Click on connect and fill out the form. All shows are immediately archived in video form on J More Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com, and also YouTube. We truly appreciate when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. We've had many great guests, so go back. If you want to take your mind off what's going on in this world, just plug in, and you don't have to watch it, you can listen to it. May your plates always, always remain full, and I hope to see you next week.